What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist here with
Gershwan.
And today we're back at it to answer more questions once again in another installment of, you guessed it, For the Greater.
This is a video series where we answer the questions left by you, the viewer. If you have a question for us, comment down below. Put question in front of your question because we get to those questions first. And if you enjoy our content, you like listening to us banter about Warhammer 40K and other random shit, you can support the channel with a super thanks. If you do, ask us anything you want and we will make it a thumbnail question in the next episode. In other words, you will be leading the next Greater WAAAGH. And that is what Louis Doyer has done. He says, hope you guys are doing good. We are, kind of.
Yeah.
I know that this is highly improbable, but let's suspend disbelief. If you were a Tau Ethereal or a Fire Warrior commander and you got to pick one of the Primarchs to join the Empire, which would you pick and why? Let's say whichever you pick joins willingly. That's a good one. That's a really good question.
Yeah, the way I picture it, it's like in gym class when you're playing dodgeball and you got all the people lined up and you're like, you.
Yeah.
First pick, I think I'm going to go with probably the no-brainer, and that's Ferrus Manus.
Yeah.
Because he's not dead at this point, and he's kind of like tech savvy too, and he's all about like he wasn't about flesh is weak. This was after his death, but I think he would be a very good kind of defense, or like he'll like make the Tau more bulky, more badass, and I think that's what they're missing right now. Because when you look at a lot of the Tau suits, they're not very defensive. They're kind of fragile, almost like glass cannons. So I think to see them put more bulk, more defense on their battle suits and any other type of like drones or AI type of weaponry would be greatly beneficial to them.
Yeah, and I also see Ferrus Manus having, obviously, the Necrodermis arms helpful because the Tau are constantly trying to improve their technology, and they do not shy away from stealing from Xenotech.
Yeah, so I think Necrodermis battle suits, Necrodermis like Tau armor would be really beneficial to them, especially because it's like self-repairing and stuff like that.
If I had to pick a Tau, or I guess if I had to pick a Primarch to join the Tau Empire, it would definitely be Rogel Dorn, because he's like the basically castle builder and city fighter, and I think the Tau Empire is that. They have a sector of space, they stay to that sector of space, and they guard it. They have spheres, literal basically fortresses. So you have the center sphere, and it kind of expands.
Second sphere, third sphere, fourth sphere, etc.
And if you look at the Terran map, that is what Terra is. It's just basically starting from the inner sanctum, outer sanctum, the walls, and then it moves over to like the different like solar rings and all that kind of stuff. So Rogel Dorn would be perfect for that.
Yeah, I think we agree that the Tau just need more defense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because thinking about it, I almost said Magnus because like they don't really have any psychic presence, and I think a Psyker would greatly boost. But I mean, Magnus is just one dude.
Yeah.
Like, he can't be everywhere. I mean, maybe he can. Like, he does have, like, his soul is fractured into different shards and stuff like that. But yeah, I think I'll still stick with Ferrus Manus.
Yeah, I think that choosing Magnus was also like in the back of my mind, just because yes, the Tau could benefit from a psychically powerful anything. So
who's the last one you would pick?
To join the Tau Empire, I think the shittiest Primarch to join the Tau Empire would probably be Fulgrim.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, he's all about perfection, and it seems like the caste system is not that.
Yeah.
The caste system is about building on top of the weaknesses and like kind of creating...
It's camaraderie.
Yeah.
Or like perfection is like trying to improve yourself.
Yes.
And the greater good is more of like, you know, benefit the whole, the all over the one.
They're super body positive. It doesn't matter if you're a squatty earth cast, a super tall air cast, whereas Fulgrim would be like, nah, you got to be perfect every time.
Yeah, it's one for all, not all for one.
Yeah.
And I'd say Lorgar would be mine. Because it's two different ideologies.
Yeah.
He's preaching the Lectitio Divinatis, while the Tau is preaching the greater good.
Yeah. It would be like a good corruption thing. But
Yeah.
A good question. Let's move on to the next one.
This one is by Cyclic Rick. What would be the outcome if we took a Tech Marine and made him into a Princeps of a Titan?
A tech priest?
Yeah. If you took a Tech Marine and made him into a Princeps of a Titan.
So it's almost like taking a low-ranking Navy officer and putting him in a, like a plane for the Air Force. Because a low-level tech priest, or what is it, tech
Priest, Tech Marine.
Yeah, throwing him into like something that is like super glorified, super like you need a lot of augmentation to be a Princep, it's not the same.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, just because they're super soldiers, Space Marines don't always automatically excel in every position they're put in.
Yeah.
They're like going to be leading like Imperial Guard regiments or sometimes even be sitting on like a council for planets like an Ultramar. But for the most part, Space Marines only know one thing, and that's fighting.
Yeah.
So I think the only reason why they lead is because they're like captains and they have like a bunch of tactical expertise. But if you just take some old run-of-the-mill Space Marine from like squad beta and you put him in to try to lead or try to do any other job, like he's just gonna like bulldoze through it. Might makes right with the Space Marines as well as the Orcs.
Yeah, and it's completely different upbringings for both of them. I
Yeah.
think one of them is very much into like the Adeptus, or the, what is it called? The Imperial Cult? No, not the Imperial Cult. What do the Adeptus Mechanicus worship? What is that called?
The Omnissiah?
Yeah, but like that whole like cult mechanic, the cult
Yeah,
Mechanicus.
Cult Mechanicus, yeah.
Whereas the Tech Priest is just kind of adjacent to, or tech. I keep saying Tech Priest, but
Yeah,
the
Tech Marine.
Yeah.
There is a follow-up.
Yep.
Would the Tech Marine's mental fortitude allow him to better control the machine spirit of the Titan, or would there be some downside to this?
Like you mentioned, there'll be downside because they're built for war, whereas like Princep is more like all over the place.
Tech Marines, they do have a little bit of like technical know-how, but I feel like when it comes to like the machine spirit, that's a little bit more complex for a Titan than it is for like a Land Raider or a Dreadnought, etc.
Yeah. But good question. Let's move on to the next one. This one comes from Escatonian66666. Are there any lore hints, especially from recent 40k stuff, as to what new Emperors of Children units could be the rumored revamp dedicated factions? Like how we got 8 bound, etc. for the World Eaters last year.
It could be a possibility, but like when it comes to chaos, I feel like it's all cyclical. You will get lore for like the Khorne, the Nurgle, and Zeech aspects of it, but then we'll never get anything for Slaanesh.
Yeah.
So if it happens, it'll be a while because we just recently got World Eater stuff.
Yeah. So probably towards the end of 10th edition. So what would be that? Another 2 years, 2-3 years?
I hope not, but probably. Maybe 11th. Maybe there'll be the face army that the Imperium's fighting.
But remember, we are always wrong because for a really long time we were saying no Primarchs would ever return because GW doesn't want to do that, and then Gilliman shows up.
Yeah.
We were saying the Lion's probably not going to come back. It's probably going to be somebody else, like another trader, and then boom, the Lion does come back. So we are always wrong, guys. Don't listen to us. Next one.
Fister Macrophallus 2209. Now that the Tau have been exposed to the existence of the warp and the greater galaxy in general, how do you think the Tau would be able to survive? Obviously they are not going to get deleted, but how will the lore justify their survival? Perhaps their navy.
So far, they've been surviving because they've castled up. And I think that's not really going to change. They're making small jumps into, I guess, the warp with their little, like, skipping thing.
The Star-type Nexus? Yeah.
So slowly, like, more understanding how to use warp technology to jump over. And be in different places within the galaxy, because I think that's what GW was doing with the Star-type Nexus. Everybody was saying like, well, how could the Tau Empire be fighting in the Tempestus Pacificus or whatever, or Tempestus, whatever it is?
Yeah, like how are we ever going to introduce these two races if they're like on opposite ends of the galaxy?
Yeah, and then now you have that capability.
Basically wormholes, but they have to like traverse the warp and stuff, and like then I'm pretty sure it was like Zeech that was messing with them. So that's how you add more factions and more interaction between two races.
Yeah. So how are they going to interact with the warp? They're just going to control it better. Next question comes from Bob Jim 6584. Do Jeanstealer cults look different when working on a non-human based planet? Do they look closer to Orcs, Eldar, or Tau when infesting the planets where those are the main races on the planet? Yeah, so basically hybrids or neophytes, whatever it's called, they resemble the national populace. So like if they were to invade America, they would be overweight, pill poppers, addicted to coke.
In financial crisis, housing crashes.
If they invaded Europe, they'll wear skinny jeans and be arrogant. Maybe not the UK, but
Yeah. Antarctica? What do they got going on?
polar bears. They look like polar bears. That'd be crazy. A polar bear-sized Genestealer hybrid. That'd be scary as fuck. But the thing about Genestealer
Oh,
called
Chilango? Jeanstealers? Oh, man.
No Chemical.
Right? They're going to have a little Edgar haircut?
Yes. Somebody should create a meme of that. Genestealer cults with Edgar haircuts.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what an Edgar haircut is, educate yourself. It's a Hispanic Heritage Month. It is, right?
It is, yeah. It might be over in like a day or two, but yeah.
But what's cool is that these Genestealer cults infect whatever the populace is, but they do have to be intelligent. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be a sentient creature. That's why they don't interact with like AI or Necrons.
Yeah. I did a 40 facts on Genestealer Orc hybrids. You can check that out. I did it for last year's Orktober, and it gives you details of what that looks like.
Yeah, really interesting stuff with the Tyranids, because usually you hear about like Gaunts and like the big monsters. You don't really hear too much about the Genestealers.
The next question comes from H.R. Welch. What are your favorite Warhammer books and why?
Right now, it has to be The End and the Death, because there's just so many crazy revelations, and it's a very... I mean, it's the apex of the Siege of Terra, the end of the Horus Heresy. It's leading up to the final fight between the Emperor and Horus, and there's like crazy stuff going on. You've got literal like titans getting crucified on the walls of Terra. Like the Emperor is kind of shitting bricks, but at the same time he's got to appear like he's like all-knowing, all-powerful to make sure that his forces, the Imperium, which is on the losing side, has that extra bit of hope and willpower to bring an end to this.
Yeah. I haven't read that book. For me, my favorite book is the Eisenhorn Xenos book.
Oh, yeah, those are always good, because think of it in terms of scale, where you have like the end of like this huge, massive war on the End of the Death, and then you have more like integral, interpersonal, and small skirmish type battles with like the Eisenhorn novels.
Yeah, you see the individual within these books, whereas, yes, big scale with Horus Heresy and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you still have like Primarchs and how they feel and interact and stuff, but not to the really nitty-gritty parts.
Yeah, not to the cool stuff that you can use in like a D&D campaign. Well, those were the questions for today. If you guys have more questions for us, please comment down below. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us.
Yeah, and as always, guys, it's the Sound Alchemist. Keep these questions coming, and so will we. And
First one.
We're out.
Always used to put my freedom first.